Welcome to episode 17 of Amplified Marriage. Today we have a special guest, my mom. We are talking about what happens if your marriage falls apart.
Welcome to another episode of Amplified Marriage. My name's Natalie.
And I'm Brian.
Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, grab a snack, grab a cup of coffee or tea, sit on the couch, cozy up. Today we have a special guest.
And her name is?
Linda.
She is so happy to say her name into the microphone for the very first time. Linda is my mother. We are excited to have her with us today, and hopefully by the end of this you'll have a nugget, a little bit of information, a little bit of something that maybe, even as we talk about what we want to talk about tonight, is actual divorce and the things leading up to it, and some of the ideas surrounding divorce and things like that. So, you've heard on our podcast a lot. We've talked about foundations, techniques, or communication, or sex, or dates, or how you should pray with each other or talk to each other, words you should never use. And we just kind of want to go, if all of that breaks down and we get to the place where divorce is an option and you start to consider divorce. And so one of the first things, Mom, how long were you married?
17 years.
You're married for 17 years. How long has it been since you were divorced?
22 years.
So do you feel in the 22 years that you've been able to heal your heart, heal part of you that was kind of just messed up during the divorce?
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah. And you feel like that God's been able to put you back together again?
Definitely.
Yeah. And what were some of the, like even leading up to the last year, what were the warning signs that you saw or were there any warning signs?
I wouldn't say there was warning signs that divorce was impending, but our communication was less and less. We never had good communication to begin with. So
what does that mean? Not good communication?
We did not share our hearts with each other.
Okay.
We did not share our really deep inner feelings. I learned early on that anything I shared was fair game.
For other people?
In conversation anywhere.
To share just with friends or people?
Oh, that wouldn't sit well with me either.
No. And so how soon was it into the relationship where you realized that was a boundary that was consistently being crossed and you shut down?
It was quite far in before it was blatant in my face, where there was an incident that happened and it was like I said, don't tell, and he walked out and told. And
wow.
There was a moment that, and this was already in our last 5 years,
right,
where it really started widening the gap. Up until then, it was very subtle. It was little things, and I couldn't even put my finger on it. It was just little things I didn't share. I just kept myself to myself, but not totally. I mean, I was trying to make the marriage work, trying to be relational.
Yeah.
But we didn't get close. We didn't get intimate in our conversation.
Right.
No.
In those times where you felt like the boundary was crossed, were you able to communicate after company left, let's say, and say about that earlier thing that I said, please don't disclose, and then you went in there and disclosed? Were you able to communicate your displeasure in that, or you just kind of let it be?
I think I just let it go.
Right.
I think I just shut the door and, let it go.
So what did that do to your willingness or your desire to communicate? Like, how do you consistently, literally lift up the rug and sweep something under there without the what's under the rug turning into a mountain and you're just angry and bitter? Because you're my mom. You're not super angry or bitter.
No.
Even back then, you weren't super angry or bitter that I remember.
No, and I wasn't. I think I just want to back up a little bit and say I was very naive when I went into marriage.
Yeah.
I had the understanding that I was a Christian, he was a Christian, it's going to work.
Yeah.
That was almost the only prerequisite I had. We had no marriage counseling.
Oh, okay.
And I will say right now, don't anybody go into marriage without marriage counseling.
Yeah.
Like doing the pre-marriage thing.
Intensive pre-marriage counseling.
Yeah.
Because we had nothing. And we discussed nothing ahead of time, none of the pitfalls.
Right.
I mean, we talked about, we want to have kids. And you're going to stay home as a mom and I'll work. General things.
So did that happen? Like that was the conversation you had? He's like, you're going to stay home, or you're like, yeah, I want to stay home.
Yeah, it was a conversation that we both agreed on. I was happy to stay home and raise kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he was, he wanted to go to work. He didn't want me working. I don't even know that he ever said, I don't want you working. It was just kind of one of those things, like we were going to be very traditional without it being said. It was just kind of how we were falling into it.
Yeah.
Right.
And we both were on the same page as far as that goes.
Yeah.
So you said strongly, everyone who's considering getting married, and Natalie and I would say, even if you are married, go and get counseling if you need it. Even we know many couples that have done preventative marriage counseling just to work on stuff. Mm-hmm. So if you need that, go and get counseling. There's nothing wrong with getting counseling. So I kind of want to rewind that back to before you were dating. If you didn't do the pre-marriage counseling and you hadn't in depth gone into those things and you hadn't worked on that side of things, what was like kind of tying you together and kind of holding you together early on in the marriage if you weren't having like really in-depth conversations about how life was going to go?
Well, we probably were having conversations that were very fairy tale-ish. You're going to get married because we love each other. We're going to have kids and we're going to,
love conquers all.
Yeah. And we're Christians. Yeah. It's going to work.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's yeah.
And I think a lot of people go into it like that. Can I just ask so as you were saying, like you didn't do the pre-marriage counseling or whatever. So as you were now you're married, what was your support system like as far as a church or good. Friends even that you trusted, that were able to speak into your life or to notice, hey, Linda, I noticed that, you really shut down. Did you have any of that?
We were going to Bible school at the time that we met and married. And so a lot of our peers in Bible school also were married.
Right.
We're getting married all at the same time. And I think all of us were kind of in that same boat. Like, we're Christians. It's going to work. Hallelujah. God is good. And, just kind of that way. And we went to church in the same church. But there wasn't a closeness with anybody. We didn't have a life group. Those were not then. And we were only there a year and we moved right to the other side of the province where there was no one.
Where was your Bible school?
Okay.
Vancouver.
And you moved from Vancouver to
Kitimat.
Oh, Kitimat. That's where I was born.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The iron smelting.
So at any point in the 17 years, would you say that there was a time where you felt really confident in the community of friends and support that you had that were rooting and cheering for your marriage?
It's funny when you put it that way. Like, we were involved in a life group. When we came back from Kitimat and moved to Surrey eventually, we were involved in a life group and we were friends with all those people and we, had good friends. But I wouldn't say that there was people, except for one couple, that would be part of it, part of our relationship, for sure. Mm-hmm. But other than that, nobody really knew anything other than, what you're putting out at church or in life group, right?
Yeah.
Our life group was very large. It wasn't an intimate kind of a life group. It was a large, fun family life group.
Easy to get lost in. Mm-hmm. Kind of reminds me of our life group we went to in Red Deer.
Yeah.
That was very large too, and you just felt like you were the only one going through things, and so you just keep quiet.
Is that the one in Oriole Park?
Yeah, that's the one that...
We were the couple that fights all the time?
Yeah, that's what we were labeled as.
Yeah, we were there one time, and this church life group, we just were being open, because that's the kind of people we are, and they labeled us the couple that fights all the time.
Really?
Oh, yeah. So
they couldn't remember our names other than, you're the couple that fights all the time.
Yeah, and we went a second time, and that was the last time we ever went, because they were not the friendliest of people.
No.
And that's, I think it's all of these experiences that we have now that kind of drive us towards sharing with people the struggles that Christian marriages have.
Yep.
Like, let's not be blind to the fact that, we have Christ, and that's a huge part of who we are, and it gives us hope and a strength and a direction and a purpose to do these things, but it's not like a catch-all, save all, your marriage is dying. Oh, I'm just going to focus on Jesus. No, those are good things you should be doing to help you prevent the marriage falling apart.
The feelings of no support isn't just for Brian and I's generation, right? It's obvious. Like, we're not the only ones who have felt like that. Mm-hmm. You felt like that, and there's probably people even older that have felt like that at some point.
So in the 17 years, because you said you had a really large life group, in the 17 years, did you have a group that was like, or friends that counseled you both?
Like a closer
circle that counseled you in your marriage? Or was it, you had close friends, but it was one of those subjects, that's your marriage, this is my marriage.
Yeah.
I'm not going to interfere with yours.
Don't interfere with mine.
Even if like you're being a bad wife, your friend's not going to come to you and be like, hey, you need to like smarten up here. What was that attitude? Or why did you say that? That was rude.
That was never a part of our life. I can't even for myself, being in that, a young married person would not have said that to anyone. It was just not the way we operated.
Yeah.
Now, we had super good friends that were very close to us, and I was very close to her, and we shared things,
right?
But not as a couple to couple.
So there wasn't that the identification, like, hey, you're going to help me through my marriage, I'm going to help you through yours, and we're going to work together to succeed at this.
No, we didn't have that.
Did you ever take any like marriage classes or marriage conferences or anything like that over the years?
Marriage conferences?
No.
Okay.
There wasn't.
No, there was marriage conferences and you didn't take them, or no, there was no such thing?
There was none that I was aware of, and we took none.
Wow. Okay. So no pre-marriage counseling is what, then this, just as a recap quickly, no marriage counseling, no community around you that was challenging you to be.
Yeah. Or even cheering you on.
So then it goes to the other question, kind of following along the lines of community. I know Grandma is like a prayer person. And Grandpa was too. They were like God-fearing, God-loving, praying for her kids, praying for their kids all the time. So were you able to go to Grandma and just be like, hey, this is what's going on? And she's like, I'll pray for you and that kind of stuff?
I don't believe that I ever really shared. Now, we didn't live in the same town.
Yeah.
So, it was phone conversations, and, once or twice a year they'd come visit, or we'd come down.
Yeah.
So I don't believe that I ever shared intimate things that were going on. You know, I would never, because again, it's kind of how I was raised.
Yeah.
What's at home stays at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't share with it out with other people.
Oh, okay.
And so I don't believe I shared things, maybe little things with Mom, and they were aware, because they could see just, when they would come to visit, they would see how it was.
And like attention.
They could feel the vibes, feel the tension for sure. They were aware. And I probably said little things, but I certainly wouldn't have phoned her up and said, Mom, my marriage is just like terrible. What can I do? Yeah. I wouldn't have done that.
Right.
So is that because of the way you were raised? That kind of stuff is just, because I feel like that's a generational thing.
Right.
And a pride thing, if I can say it that way. Like, yes, it's part of it is generations, but the other part of it is that a pride issue on your part, or was that just like, that's what Grandma and Grandpa did? Their marriage, I don't know if their marriage ever struggled. They were married for how many years?
A long time.
Yeah.
A long time.
60 years.
Yeah.
They had struggles, but they weren't out there, so we knew about them.
Right.
But I know they were different personalities. They didn't always agree on everything, but they were careful how they portrayed that.
Yeah.
Right.
So we didn't see disagreements or arguments or fights, and they didn't fight anyways.
Yeah.
And on my part, I think it's just like, we just didn't share stuff like that.
So in 17 years, there was really no reaching out. There was no people investing in. Just is that what you're saying?
I would say in the last 5 years of our marriage, and even longer, but specifically in the last 5 years, I did have the one friend that was pouring into me.
Yeah.
Right.
Not into us. I mean, they were good friends of ours, but we didn't share our marriage with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because just because it didn't happen that way.
Yeah.
But she knew what was going on with me, and I shared everything with her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she poured into me a lot. Yeah. I probably would have left a lot sooner had it not been for her.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Because she kept sending me back.
Right.
You can do this. You can do this. You just pray. God will give you the wisdom. He'll give you strength. You can just do it.
Right.
Whatever wisdom she would give me, I would,
So what you're saying is that she never encouraged you to separate.
Never.
It was always encouraging you to success. Like, hey, you can do this. Things can get better.
Right.
Yes.
And man, there's so many important things in just that, like 10 minutes. Like there's so many things in 10 minutes. That was awesome. Like very, very good nuggets just about the things that we've been talking about.
Can I just ask so as she's pouring into you, what was your inner dialogue like at that point were you in your heart when she's like, encouraging you to stay, were you already disconnected in your heart and being like, this is just a moot point.
That's
There's
a good question.
No point. Or how did you find that strength?
I would say that probably towards the end, definitely I was disconnecting, but most of the time I was not. I was still trying desperately. I was never thinking divorce. I was never thinking we're going to end this.
Because we're Christians and we don't divorce.
We're Christians and we don't, yeah. So I was trying to make it work. I had been praying for a long time. I've been praying for him. I've been praying for the marriage. I've been doing what I could do, and it was getting tougher for sure. Right. And I think towards the end, there was a disconnect in the sense that nothing's working.
Right.
And I did leave one time, and I came to the end of myself.
Do I remember this? Where did you go?
I went to my friends.
Okay.
And you children were dispersed.
We went amongst, which was fairly normal for us anyway. Mm-hmm. We kind of dispersed among the friends that we had there. I remember that.
Yeah.
I don't remember that incident per se.
Yeah. Well, I was away for a weekend. I didn't leave town or anything. I was there. But I spoke to him and I said, this is it. Like, we're at a crisis point. I can't do this anymore. And we had tried some counseling that hadn't flown.
Okay.
And so I just said, I'm at a point. I can't do this anymore. We're done. Like, I just can't. And of course, he said all the right things and whatever he said. And so I went back. But I said to him, if we cannot work this out and I leave again, it's done.
Yeah.
Because I'm not coming back and forth like a yo-yo.
Yeah.
So maybe this is too much to, what was the emotion or I don't want to really go into the incident, but that kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. Because you said, like, really what you've been doing for 5 years was lifting up the mat, sweeping things under. The mountain was getting bigger and it was getting bigger, and the molehill was turning into a mountain, and nothing was working. Prayer, counseling didn't obviously work. No friends around you, didn't any of that kind of stuff. So what was that moment like when you're just like, I don't know what to do next. I think we're done.
I don't remember that moment very well.
No.
I don't remember what brought me to that point of actually packing a bag and leaving the house. Because for me to do that, I was a very submissive wife. I never pushed any arguments to the point where it would blow up. I was subservient. And not in a bad way. I don't want to make it sound like I was just a doormat. I wasn't. No. But I wasn't going to push it to the point of exploding to where I couldn't bring it back.
So can I just ask a question there? Mm-hmm. So you said it's not in a bad way, that you were like submissive or subservient. Did that eventually come around to the fact that, like, if I push here, I know it's going to just pop and it's going to turn into an argument? Or is it that's just how you were all the way through?
Yeah, I think that it was like, if I pushed it too far, it wasn't that he exploded or any of that. It was just that nothing changed.
Yeah.
So why bother? So, I'd maybe done it once or twice and it was like, nothing happens.
Yeah. So it was like even what we've talked about in the podcast is it's a behavioral momentary change because there's a reward for the change.
Or you get something out of it. So in this particular case, it was saying all the right things that, one would expect a wife would want to hear in order
to keep the marriage
going. To keep it going, right? But you just find yourself circling because you haven't got to the root of what actually was going on in the heart of the person.
Yeah, and you're not actually dealing with things. You're still, even though you're like, yes, this, I'll come back. You're actually just lifting up the rug and you're sweeping more stuff underneath the rug. I get it. Yeah. That's really, there's a lot of gold in this. Like,
did you find after the fact, after you made the choice, you know what, like we've exhausted all things, were you ever scorned? Because I feel like back in the day, it was such a taboo subject, especially in the church. Was there a divide, or did you feel like an outcast, I guess, if that's the right word?
No, not at all.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. In that church where we had been that last 5 years, I had good friends.
Yeah.
Good support. So no, I was never, again, everybody knew us. Everybody knew both of us.
Yeah.
Right. So they were not wholly surprised, and they were supportive.
Yeah.
And I've not found it a problem anywhere. Nobody has ever scorned me in any place I've been.
That's awesome. So many times you hear when it comes to divorce and like old mentalities of religious thinking and how, somehow it's just a huge issue. And I think over the years, the church really has done damage for women and men in that situation.
No, I was really blessed with a lot of support at that point.
Yeah, just not during the relationship.
Well, in the last 5 years, there was more support.
Yeah.
Yeah. But do you think at the last 5 years at that point, it was just a sinking ship? Looking back now that you probably can.
I think the last 5 years, because of where we were, was the beginning of the end.
Okay. How do you mean where we were, like location-wise?
Because we were in Williams Lake, and we had been called to come alongside another pastor and his wife taking over a church. We were called to come and work alongside them. Yeah. And that was like the beginning of the end.
Okay. So even as like, what was how long after, like when it finally was over, was it that you were finally finished with like having to be in the same house, pay the same bills, do all that kind of stuff together? Did it take for you to finally just land on your feet, for instance, or to say, like, I don't know what that means, but like to land and you felt like, okay, I can move forward? Like what was the separation like for you emotionally with all the kids, all four of us? We were here because I remember what it was like for us. I was the oldest.
Well, I tell you, that was a whole brand new experience for me because I didn't take care of the money.
Right.
I never made any money. So.
That's right.
Yeah. It was a brand new experience. And, again, there was a lot of support, especially at that point. I went into my doctor and told her what was going on. I told her I needed some help getting out of town.
Yeah.
And she helped me get finances from welfare, and and I had friends that were also helping.
Yeah.
And it was seamless leaving town once we got to that point.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of, stuff before.
Dipsy doodles.
Yeah, a little bit. Getting the things out of the house, which ended up not being a problem. But, these are the things you have to overcome now, right? Because I had just left. Taken the kids and left with some clothes. But obviously we needed more things to leave. So, that was a bit of a little dip there, if you want to call that.
Yeah.
But then once we left, it was a matter of finding a place to settle. And welfare, at that time, was just a godsend. And they were very helpful. They provided finances to actually get a truck and to move us out of town. And then I was on welfare for a good couple of years before I had to do the next thing financially. So for me, that was a great blessing. It gave me the time to settle, to find a place to live, to just, raise my kids and move on and get healed.
Yes.
So I was pretty much in that mode for a couple of years before I had to go out and look for a job.
Yeah, I remember that.
So what was the timeline from moment of like, we are leaving to this place where you say that you found healing? What was the timeline, if you can remember? How many years? Because where you moved to, I think for the first time, you really had a sense of community. Mm-hmm. And people that care about you, be it that they're in a similar situation, and you just found like this band of women to help shoulder the weight of single mom.
Mm-hmm. So from the time that I left until I came here to Kelowna and came into this church was probably only about 3 or 4 months. And within a short time, I was enveloped into this single moms group where we had, like you say, women all in the same boat and teaching and prayer ministry. Mm-hmm. And there began the healing right there for me and then for all of the kids as well. And then just being in church and being enveloped in the community and in the church. Yeah, there was healing there.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say it came pretty quickly. It didn't take us long to find our feet. Yeah. From the time that we left until we got settled here. But then I'd say it was a good couple of years before, got really settled.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I remember when we landed here, we started going, we didn't really try any other churches, did we?
No.
Why was that?
We came here because of this church.
Oh, see, I didn't know that until this moment. I was today years old when I learned that particular fact. How did you hear about it beforehand?
Well, Pastor Dave had been in our church at Williams Lake one time.
So the one time was enough that we should go to this church?
Well, you got to remember, I moved here with another family.
Yeah.
My supportive family.
Yeah.
And we had decided it would either be Cranbrook or Kelowna.
Thank goodness it was Kelowna.
Yeah, because of a pastor there or this pastor here. Mm-hmm. I preferred this one because it was closer to my family down at the coast.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's why we settled here.
So because Pastor Dave preached in that church one time, we knew of a church that was here, and then we came here. It's almost like God knows what's going to happen, because now I'm an associate pastor at that same church 25 years later.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just, it's amazing what God does. Yeah. Because I remember, at the beginning, I think it was Pastor Diane was there, and she was part of our history as a family and part of the healing and the things moving on. What to you, being part of a church community or being part of a community, was the most important part, or maybe there's a couple, some really important parts about church community or just community in general? We say church community because that's just a huge part of who we are.
Yeah.
Like that's a part of who we are. So church community, why is it so important that you wrap yourself around or put yourself in a position to have that kind of community?
Yes.
Well, standing alone is very lonely. I can't even imagine it. When we were drawn into this church, I mean, we attended with another family, so I didn't walk into the church alone.
Yeah.
But it wasn't very long before we were enveloped into this.
Yeah.
Right. And then not long after that, we were enveloped into a life group that took kids.
Right.
A family life group. Yeah. So, we were just enveloped in a life group and in a single mother's ministry and in the church. And I remember specifically in church, every Sunday, there'd be a lady that would always come and give me a hug. And she'd always, every time I saw her, it was like, oh, every time.
Yeah.
You would cry or she would?
I would.
Oh.
Because she would always come and just say the right one thing.
Yeah.
Right. And it was a real blessing to me, so I was being blessed at Life Group. I was being blessed in the Single Moms Ministry and ladies Bible study in the daytime. Like I just had it. Like I was just being enveloped everywhere and being fed and being prayed over and nurtured and, and like, how can you not heal?
Right.
And then being a part of, like friendships that have lasted.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Some of those friendships that you're still friends
still
with
my
now,
friends today.
22 years later.
That's right.
They're still your really close friends that you meet with every single week and have
Yeah.
dinner with all the time. And I've spent time with their kids. And,
That's right.
Yeah, growing up. That's amazing.
It's necessary.
It's necessary.
Like I can't, we've been there, you've been there where you have felt completely alone and in a situation where you even felt like you couldn't even share with anyone the struggles that you were having because it just wasn't something that
was done
in that time.
That's right.
We even felt, some generations after the fact in our early years that we couldn't, there's no way that we could talk. It's embarrassing
Yeah.
to talk like we shouldn't be having problems, right? We just got married. Like, what is there really to have problems about? And it just can spiral downhill so quickly. What would you say to someone who might be listening that finds themselves in a similar situation to what you have experienced? What would be something that you would encourage them to do or not to do from your experience?
It's a good question.
I think the most important thing is to find a group, like whether it's a ladies group, whether it's a single moms group, whether it's a life group that's, a mixed life group
Yeah.
or a family, whatever you can, wherever you can fit in, just grab a hold of and share your life.
Yeah.
Like, don't keep it to yourself. Share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether you cry every time,
Yep.
as you know I do, all the time. But you come to a place where you don't cry anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it happens.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Because you're healing.
And it might happen to me yet. No.
Yeah.
It'll always happen to you.
Yeah.
There's always crying.
There's always crying. But that's the most important thing, is to go places where you can be loved on,
Yes.
where you can be ministered to, where you can be prayed for, and where you can in turn love on others
Right.
and pray for others.
Exactly. I think it's important to note that, going into it, I mean, I would think it's safe to say most people wouldn't go into marriage with like, well, this is my first go around and the next time I'll get it right. I would hope not. We certainly didn't. I know that you said earlier that you did not go into your marriage with a second option. Like this is it. This is, till death do us part. If you're in the situation where it has ended, that there's still life after the fact.
There is.
Right? And did you ever battle your own inner demons with feeling like a failure in that way, especially with raising boys and your daughters? Was there ever war there of how can I speak into their life what I know I walked into my marriage
Right.
thinking when it just seemingly fell apart?
Well, that's good.
Was there ever a time where you felt, I'm just not cut out for this? Like, how can I speak to something that didn't even last for me?
Specifically that, no. I felt as a failure sometimes, and even that's a strong word. I felt often that I didn't know how to raise boys.
Right.
Right. But I prayed often. I prayed always that God would be the father. Just be the dad. Be the dad to these boys, because I don't know how to dad.
Yep.
Right. And I would pray that other men would come along and father them, or, speak into their lives. But I never felt that because I was a failure at marriage, I couldn't speak to them about
Right.
marriage. Not that I don't think I really spoke into that much, but I didn't feel a failure at that. I felt that I did everything I could to make the marriage work.
Yep.
And so then I would say, go into it, do it, do what you can, make the best of it.
Yep.
Give it your best.
That's right.
Trust God.
That's huge.
To work it out.
Right.
And to trust God to work you out.
Yeah.
Right?
First
like so
of all,
many, I was like, Lord, you need to fix him.
Yeah.
Right? And all the while there was big gaps in my own heart that needed fixing.
So that being said that way, that's actually really good, because we're talking about this for you had to take responsibility for your actions, the way you responded, the way you reacted. Is there ever a time where you just rose up and just kind of just said something that damaged things further? Because you said very early on that you're kind of not subservient, but like submissive and just kind of, you're not
Mom's
aggressive.
Peaceable.
Yeah, peaceable. You're peaceable. You want peace
And agreeable.
And sometimes, because I know I'm much like Dad, I'm not always agreeable.
Right.
If more often than not,
Yeah.
I'm the least of the agreeable people.
But I have seen over the years, I have been in this family for almost 22 years. And I have seen Mama Bear rise up.
Yeah, right.
That I'm like, oh, you're going to get smacked.
Someone's going to get hurt real bad.
Yeah. It's going to be you, and good on you, Mom.
Yeah. This is her thinking silence.
I don't know that I ever really spoke to the wall is kind of how I would feel. I think I would, when I was at the end, I was at the end. And like, if you push me far enough, then this is how it's going to be.
Mama Bear rolls.
Yeah. But it takes a lot to get me there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can get pushed a long ways before I stand up. And I think then when I get to that point, then we're done. That's it. Like, no more.
Yeah. Right.
No more.
I can tell you, you have an immense amount of patience. I remember, I don't know, we were living in this house that we're currently in, and it seems like every day we were just fighting. Do you remember that? It was just like every day, no matter what. It wasn't even, you were trying to hold me to like, hey, you said you're going to pay rent, or hey, you're going to do the dishes, or hey, it's your laundry day, or hey, like you need to do these things. And it just felt like we were fighting all the time. And I know, you had 4 kids. I'm the oldest. I remember much more about the things that happened. Mm-hmm. Like early on, some of the younger of my siblings doesn't even remember some of the stories that I have about some of the things that had happened. Do you feel like in all of those years, being away, not having a husband, that trying to, do you feel like you've succeeded in parenting your children the way you wanted to, with a dad not being present or a husband not being present?
Heavens, no. You can always look back and think, oh, I should have done that different.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have responded that way. Oh, if I'd only done this.
Right.
There's always, these things, they scroll through your mind and you could just like, oh, I can't believe I did that. But at the same time, I have to believe that, God knew who I am and he knew who you guys were.
Yeah.
And I prayed always that he would fill in the holes. That was my particular prayer. God, just be the dad and fill in the holes.
Yeah.
Because I knew I had holes.
Yep.
I knew there was areas that I wasn't doing it right, or I just wasn't comfortable in. Mm-hmm. I was just, God, just take care of that.
Did you, in all of that, did you feel like you just weren't enough?
Sometimes.
So how did you manage that?
God filled in the holes.
God filled in the holes.
Yep.
Yeah. What else can you do? You got to trust that God will meet the needs that need to be met in however he can do it.
That's right.
Because I can't do it all.
Well, and I know for a fact, like I've always, you raised 4 kids, 4 good kids, for the most part. I'm not going to speak to my siblings. They're not here to defend themselves if I say anything. So I hope you listen to this, guys. I could say a lot worse. But you've raised 4 children. In all of that, you've always been stable. You've always prayed. You've always been able to, I've never felt like we didn't have food on the table.
Yeah.
I never felt like I didn't have clothes. I didn't mind the Value Village clothes or wherever we went. I thought like I could find whatever I want. We never had a lack. If anything, like you can say like we never had lack.
No.
And that was the Lord. You prayed constantly. I know you did. But we never had a lack for anything. We always had what we need, even though there's almost virtually no money sometimes. God always provided. We always had food in the house. We learned to love mac and cheese with the salsa.
That stuff's so good.
Salsa cheese whiz. Yeah. See, no one remembers it except for me and the family.
So good.
The siblings looked at me like, what are you talking about? I'm like, it was the best. Anyway. And pretzels. We ate lots of pretzels. Because you can buy them back in there, and you can buy them in a bag like 2 tons for $3.
Oh, Lord.
That's true.
Can we just talk about changing it back here, away from pretzels and food?
My favorite things.
So often in the church realm, you know, there's always like a dark stigma against divorce and how blessing, like everything just seems to stop if that's the end result for your marriage. And I just want to say, like, you're living proof that, I mean, the blessings that have come on this side of things. I mean, you went back to school. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm in awe. I mean, I came into the family when I was 19. So, you were already well working at that point in the career that you chose. There was huge financial blessings because you were getting paid really well in a career that you're still working in today. Did that help to shift the mindset coming out of sort of the divorce, the big letter D that no one wants to talk about? Did you ever feel like, well, now what's left? Or will there be anything beyond this? Like, have I disqualified myself because now we're divorced? Did that ever cross your mind?
No, I don't think so. I think we had really good teaching in our single moms group, and I don't think that ever crossed my mind.
That's incredible.
I think that I was already feeling like I was more of a person. That doesn't even sound good, but I think I was more already by myself than I had been in the marriage.
Right.
So I don't think I never felt that I was lacking.
Was that like a revelation to you? Like how long after you were separated and were divorced did you finally like, hey, wait a minute, I feel like I'm more, that I could be me?
Was that after all the healing? Because it was extensive.
It would have probably been, several years down the road. Yeah. Certainly not near the beginning. But even at the beginning, I was just so receiving of God's presence and God's healing and just all that was coming to me through the church that I don't ever thought of lack. I didn't think of being a failure. I didn't think of lacking anything. And I certainly didn't think I needed to get back into that kind of a situation.
Right. Yep.
Right. So, our single moms leader at that point, one of the things she said was, for every year that you were married, you should have at least 2 or 3, not exactly sure which it was, but 2 or 3 years for every year that you were married to have healing.
Oh.
You know how many years that would have been for me?
That's a long time.
That's a long time. Like
You're still not done.
5 or 6 years. Yeah.
You're still healing.
I'm still healing, yeah. But, and you know, for most people, they don't give it that time. Now, that's, not everybody needs that long.
Yep.
But when you have children and there's all the things, there's things to work out. And you certainly don't need to jump back into another relationship quickly because you're just adding stuff on top of stuff.
Yep.
And so that always stuck in my mind. And not because I needed a guide, but it was just part of me. I needed the time to heal, and I was going to take the time to heal, and I wasn't going to put my kids through anything more because they already were going through stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, no, I think I began to bloom, really.
Yeah. I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love the fact that one of what sort of thinking back to even when Brian and I were dating, and even then, and I didn't know your whole story at that point, everything was always back to what does God say?
It was so annoying.
It used to irritate me so bad because I don't come from a divorced family. And so, I mean, there was some dysfunction. Don't get me wrong that it wasn't perfect, but it was foreign to me. And then even my own thoughts, again, back to that whole thing of like, we can't get divorced because then we're outcasts. And I mean, we were married and we were outcasts. So really like that, right? I mean, we didn't need to be divorced to be an outcast as far as dysfunction went.
Right.
But I really appreciate how you had such a solid and you still do, have such a solid identity in who you were. This was just a speed bump. This wasn't going to throw you off course. And I really saw that stance and that strength constantly, because I mean, Brian's sister was 12 when I came into the family. And so you were like right in the thick of it with her as far as, you know, child rearing and things. And it was always, you were always that silent strength. You never meddled. And I appreciated that part of never really getting in our business, although I would have appreciated you getting in a little bit of business, right? But you just took everything to God in prayer. You never sort of overstepped yourself, in my opinion.
Right.
And you still don't, right? And it's just, you know, like whatever God needs to work out in your children and in their spouses, you are 100% sure that God is going to speak and he's going to work out. And I think you said it when you said you have to be subservient and you have to be willing to allow God to work on the areas in your own heart that need healing.
Absolutely.
Just as a recap, for everything. 1, pre-marriage counseling. Get pre-marriage counseling.
Or counseling in general.
Counseling in general. Find a community. Don't let it go by where you're just trying to do marriage on your own. Find people around you that love and you and care for you and are going to push you to succeed in your marriage. Things that we've been talking about. Learn how to communicate with your spouse.
Listen to your spouse.
What?
Like one of the things that you said that was just really, you know, when you're telling your spouse something in confidentiality or just you're pouring out your heart, that's a vulnerable place to be in. Don't squash that and just start flapping gums.
Right.
Right? Like there's a trust that's broken
That's right.
at that point that we're like, if we're on a small scale here, like what else are you saying behind the scenes, right? Don't put your spouse through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mom, we just wanted to say thank you for being our very first Amplified Marriage guest on our podcast.
This was awesome.
It was very good.
Well, thanks for having me. Love being here.
And we'll have you back again, very much so, until you can start telling some of the other sides of stuff and stories that maybe I don't want to get out. But if you like our podcast, please, and you have seen it, you know what it is, you've spent some time with it, share it, let your friends know all about what we do. We're here to help you, to offer communication, some foundations, anything that we can do to help your marriage succeed.
Keeping it real.
Keeping it real. If there's a topic or a question or anything that you'd like us to discuss, please email us at amplifiedmarriage@gmail.com. And as you have heard us say before, we believe that marriage can be reset,
Refreshed,
recharged,
and restored.
Thanks for listening.
Talk to you soon.